and welcome back to our journey through the book of Exodus. And we're continuing our story as the Israelites are trying to escape from Egypt and the oppression that they were under there. And this point in the story is a story that comes to define a big part of the Israelite story. It's a story that they tell over and over again. The story of God rescuing them, of God bringing them out of slavery and captivity, a story that defines who they are. And I love this story because on the one hand, we've got God who is all powerful, who brings them out, who parts the sea, who sets them free. And on the other hand, you've got the Israelites who sometimes get it, but often don't, who complain an awful lot, who are very human. And I love that God is walking with them as he brings them out. And we've got a huge chunk of the story to get through today. And so I'm just going to hone in on a few bits, but I would really encourage you in your own time to go away and read through chapters 11 through to 18. You can do it in a couple of sittings, that's fine. So we are jumping straight in to the end of the plagues. Pete shared beautifully with us the first 9. And so we already have a big part of the story where the Egyptians have been given many opportunity to let the Israelites go. And they've said no, they will not let them go. So this isn't the first time they have been asked to let them go. And I think it's really important to remember that because it can feel quite shocking as we step in at this point to read about the plague of the firstborn and how the angel of death goes between the houses and the firstborn of the Egyptians are wiped out. But it's also important to remember the context that we're in. Right back at the beginning of the book of Exodus, we had the Egyptians killing every male baby of the Israelites. They were systematically trying to wipe out the Israelite people and certainly stem the being anymore. And it's very much acknowledged that the Egyptians at this time were a particularly brutal group of people. Pete highlighted beautifully for us last week the different plagues, and that many, if not all, may well have been linked to various Egyptian deities. And so this wasn't just a physical oppression that was being fought, but actually there was a real spiritual battle going on. And I just want you to take a few moments in your group just to talk about how do you find ways to bring the picture of God, who is love, together with the picture of God, who is a God of justice. And some of us probably find it harder than others. Some people may have a clear picture. So it's really important actually that we talk about this together, that we wrestle with it together, so that together we get a better understanding, a bigger picture of what God is like. And so as the Israelites come out of Egypt, they come out of slavery into freedom. And God speaks to them about consecrating, about offering their firstborns, both human and animals, to him. And in our culture of entitlement, where we feel like we deserve this, or I've earned this, or this should be mine by right, this can feel pretty countercultural. But it was acknowledging that actually it all belongs to God. And in verse 16 of chapter 13, it says this: "It will be a reminder to you that the Lord brought us out of Egypt with his mighty hand." Each one of us has been brought out of slavery, of captivity, by his mighty hand. we are not entitled to anything. But because of who God is, we have so much to offer him back. And the Israelites, it was to become something they were to do regularly, a reminder of who God was and who they were. And then as the Israelites carry on, verse 17 and 18, it says this: when Pharaoh let the people go, God did not lead them on the road through the Philistine country, though that was shorter. For God said if they face war, they might change their minds and returned to Egypt. So God led the people round by the desert road towards the Red Sea, and the Israelites went up out of Egypt armed for battle. And I love these few verses because it's just the reminder of how much God knows his people. The route might have been shorter, but the battle would have been harder, and they probably would have crumbled because they were scared. God knew them. He knew what they could handle. And we sometimes talk about how, maybe God thinks we can handle more than we do. But also God knows what we can't handle when we totally think we'll be fine. God knows us intimately and he loves us. And the thing I love about this is the Israelites went up out of Egypt armed for battle. They were ready. And God didn't tell them to, put down their armour or, you go much quicker without it. You're carrying all the heavy stuff. He lets them go ready, but he leads them in the way that will be best for them. And God knows you. He knows me. He knows us. He leads us in the way that will be best for us. And I wonder, are there areas for you at the moment that you need to be trusting God and that he knows what he's doing? And we're going to take a little break, and I just want you to share in your groups just something. Could be really little, it could be big, that God is asking you to trust him with at the moment. And so as we carry on, the Israelites realise that the Egyptians are pursuing them. They're not safe yet, and they begin to freak out. Exodus chapter 14 goes like this. As Pharaoh approached, the Israelites looked up, and there were the Egyptians marching after them. They were terrified and cried out to the Lord. They said to Moses, "Was it because there were no graves in Egypt that you brought us to the desert to die? What have you done to us by bringing us out of Egypt? Didn't we say to you in Egypt, 'Leave us alone, let us serve the Egyptians'? It would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the desert." And there's just all these voices. What, why, who? What are you doing? And Moses answers the people. He says, "Do not be afraid. Stand firm and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today. The Egyptians you see today, you will never see again. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still." Now, when I first read, I love these verses, but when I've been reading it, I read that last bit, the Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. I read it as a kind of just be calm, have peace, chill out a little bit. God's got this. But actually, the be still is less of a gentle, just calm down. Actually, God is saying, be still. I think a bit like when Jesus said to the wind and the waves, be still. The other picture I was thinking of is if someone is drowning and you're trying to save them, you don't gently try and get them in kicking and flailing, because the problem is they may well drag you down. You have to shock them kind of back to reality. So what you're told to do is kind of give them a slap around the face to shock them and to stop them freaking out, so you can then bring them to safety. And it's a bit, I wonder if God is just saying, stop, be quiet. I am God and I will do this. And how often does that clamour, whether it's in our head or amongst people, we begin to worry, begin to ask questions, say, oh my goodness, what about this? What about this? I don't know what to do about this. Why is this happening? Why is this so hard? And sometimes God allows us to voice it all, but sometimes I think he's just telling us to stop. Be still. I am God and I have got this. I will come through for you. Be still and know that I am God. That is not a gentle command. God is taking authority in our lives. And he's doing that as we allow him for each and every one of us. He says to the Israelites, the Egyptians you see today, you will never see again. And as we face battles in our own lives, sometimes God says to us, the battles you see today, you will never see again. This is it. And so the Israelites make their way miraculously through the Red Sea. They're free. They are out of Egypt and the other side, and they find themselves in the desert. Now, you don't have to go very far to find names of places that they visit to give you a pretty good idea of how the Israelites are doing. You find a place that they name Mara, which means bitter. A place that they call Massa, which means testing. Or a place that they called Meribah, which means arguing. It's not a particularly happy journey. And they keep grumbling, they keep moaning, they keep saying, Moses, why have you brought us here? What are you doing? But you know what? Throughout verses 15, 16, 17 and 18, we see God come through again and again as he provides for them in so many different ways, whether it's water or food or wisdom or in battle. God provides for their every need and his provision is perfect. I particularly love the story in Exodus 16. And they've been complaining that they're hungry and they haven't got enough to eat. And God has provided manna for them. Now, the first time this happens, you get people who hoard some of it and they've been really hungry. And so they're, oh, finally, we've got food, or we're going to keep a little bit over just in case we run out again. But it goes off. The food that they try to keep to the second day, it ends up smelly and full of maggots. But then later in the week, God asks them to gather a double portion to cover them through the Sabbath. Now, you can imagine the slight confusion, but this didn't work last time. There was too much. It all went off. But this time, that doesn't happen. This time, the manna is just enough. On the second day, it doesn't smell. It isn't full of maggots. It's not rotten. God provides for their needs. And this beautiful description of the Sabbath day of rest is that declaration of saying we trust God to provide. Whether that's financially, whether that's providing food, whether that's providing time to get everything done, with our work, in our homes, saying, God, we trust you. I don't have to be in control all of the time. And throughout this journey and through our own journeys, God is our provider. Even in the wilderness. This isn't in the place of plenty, this is in the wilderness, and God is constantly providing. And this is the story that the Israelites carry with them. And they remember and they tell each other over and over and over again for generations and generations. And stories are important. Our story is important. Your story is important. And I wonder if for the last part of your time together, why not share brief glimpses of your story? What's your story? If we want to be able to share it with other people, let's share it with one another. So maybe in a couple of sentences, maybe just a brief section, share some of your stories with one another as a real celebration of who God is, of our stories, of our lives, and how God has set us free. Take care. Bye.